I was standing over his body when the rain finally stopped. The storm had drenched everything, the dirt path beneath my boots, the rusted gate behind me, the black fabric of my coat now clinging to my skin. His blood was already mixing with the water, forming small rivers that crawled toward the ditch. I looked down at my hand. It was still shaking, still holding the knife, still warm from the last breath he took. El Güero, the final one. The last man who remembered my face. And just like that, it was over. 45 lives, 15 years, one cartel. And I, La Flaca Bonita, was finally out. People think you escape the cartel by running, by hiding, by betraying someone louder, more dangerous than yourself, and praying the government cares enough to protect you. That's a lie. The only way out is to erase yourself, to vanish so completely not even God could find your soul again. But I'm still here, still breathing. Because I did what no sicario ever dared to do, I turned on El Marro and lived. They think it was luck, that I was spared, that maybe the federales gave me new papers, a new town, a new face. But none of them know what I had to sacrifice, what I had to become to make that happen. No one talks about what it costs to kill the men you once called brothers, to use every trick, every lie, every weapon they taught you to survive them. I didn't do it for revenge. Not really. I did it because I had a son. His name is Sebastian. He was 8 years old the last time I looked him in the eyes and lied to him about who I was. He thinks I'm a nurse who fled an abusive husband. He believes I saved us. He doesn't know I once held a gun to the head of a crying man and smiled while I pulled the trigger. But I wasn't always like this. I was once just a girl from Celaya with dirt under her nails and dreams of a better life. And if you think El Marro was the monster in this story, you're wrong. I created him. I helped build him. And now I'll tell you how I tore it all down. I was born on December 3, 1991 in Colonia, San Miguel, a place where houses melt under the weight of poverty and dreams rot faster than the garbage piling up on every corner. My first memories are filled with the smell of burnt tortillas and the constant wail of police sirens chasing ghosts down alleys soaked in dust and fear. My father, Joaquin Moreno, was a mechanic. He worked in a truck repair shop just off the Salamanca highway. Every night he came home with grease-stained hands and a sunburned face, the kind of man who fought poverty with a wrench and silent grit. My mother, Rosa Vasquez, cleaned houses for rich families who barely looked her in the eye. They paid her just enough for beans and powdered milk. That was our normal, until one night in 2004, when I was 13 years old, everything burned. The Aguirre brothers ran the local huachicolero network. They were ghosts in the daylight, monsters at night. That September, they came to my father's workshop demanding he let them store stolen fuel from Pemex in his bays. He refused, told them he didn't want blood money, said no, like a man who still believed decency had a place in Mexico. 3 days later, they came back. It was a Friday afternoon. My father had just finished fixing a cargo truck and was locking up. They brought drums of stolen fuel and doused everything: tools, walls, engines, even the floor beneath his feet. When he tried to run, they shot him in the legs and left him screaming while they lit the match. From our home 2 blocks away, I saw the smoke before I heard the screams. The sky turned orange. The wind carried the scent of gasoline and burning flesh. I ran barefoot through the streets, slipping in puddles of oil in panic, but by the time I reached the gate, the flames were already chewing through the roof. I heard him call out for help that never came. The fire department arrived 40 minutes too late. What they found was ash and metal and a single gold wedding ring that somehow hadn't melted. That night, my mother clutched that ring to her chest like it was the last heartbeat of a man already erased. Neighbors whispered condolences through cracked doors, too scared to speak above a murmur. And I stood in the shadows, swearing to the Virgin of Guadalupe that I would avenge him. The grief felt like poison, but beneath it, something darker was growing, something colder. I started skipping school. What was the point of math and history when justice didn't exist? We lost the shop, the money, the house, moved into a single room in a crumbling vecindad where gunshots echoed every night and mothers screamed through paper-thin walls. My mother found work in a maquiladora, slaving 12 hours a day for wages that couldn't keep us fed. I tried selling food in the streets, carrying heavy baskets in the heat, hoping someone would buy enough tacos to keep the lights on. And that's when I met Miguel Angel. He was 17. Sharp smile, sharper tongue. He wore his arrogance like cologne, thick and intoxicating. Miguel worked for the Aguirre brothers, the same ones who burned my father alive. He never said it, but I knew. Everyone knew. He was a halcon, a lookout, eyes and ears for the men who ruled our streets. At first, I hated him. Hated his bike, his jokes, his flashy watch, the way he made girls giggle like nothing could touch him. But hunger has a way of softening even the hardest convictions. When someone shows you a way out of the dirt, even if it's paved in blood, you take it. I didn't fall for Miguel. I fell for the promise of escape. At 15, I became his girlfriend, and that's how I stepped into the same world that killed my father, thinking I could beat it from the inside. Miguel didn't drag me into the cartel. He opened the door, smiled, and let me walk in on my own. He started small. Gifts I couldn't afford. Sandwiches wrapped in napkins when I hadn't eaten all day. A new pair of shoes when mine split at the sole. Promises of a better future. He painted it like a fairy tale where the villains wore suits, not ski masks, and power meant never having to beg again. I wanted to hate him. I tried. But poverty wears down even the sharpest edges of grief. He introduced me to people, told them I was smart, reliable, braver than most guys. At first, the tasks were harmless, or so I told myself. Carry this envelope across town. Wait at this corner, and take note of who drives by. Listen to the police radio, and write down what you hear. Easy money. 500 pesos here, 1,000 there. More than my mother made in 2 weeks, scrubbing floors. Then came the job that changed everything. The Aguirre brothers wanted a particular gas station in Celaya Don Fernando's. It was a family business clean for 30 years, inherited from his father. But he refused to sell stolen fuel, said he'd rather close than become a criminal. That kind of defiance wasn't tolerated. Miguel and I were sent to convince him. We arrived after closing. The sky was bruised with dusk. Don Fernando was in his office counting receipts. He reached for the phone the moment we walked in, but Miguel slammed him against the wall. No gun, just pressure and persuasion. I was supposed to stay silent, but Miguel gave me a nod, the signal to take over. I smiled the same smile I'd practiced in mirrors, the one that made men lower their guard. I sat across from Don Fernando and spoke softly like a friend. Told him we understood his principles, that we admired his dedication to family. Then I pulled out my phone and showed him photos. His wife buying groceries, his son at school, his granddaughter on a swing. We know where they are, I whispered. We know when they sleep, when they walk alone. I didn't threaten him. I didn't have to. The silence between us said everything. I watched his face crumble inch by inch, watched the sweat bead at his temples, watched his hands tremble as he finally signed the contract Miguel laid on the desk. That night, I discovered something terrifying. I had a gift, not for violence, but for fear. I could speak softly and still make men break. I didn't need a gun to make someone bend. All I needed was a mirror of their own nightmares, and I had learned to hold it steady. Miguel was impressed, called me a natural, told the Aguirre brothers I was more valuable than most sicarios. They offered me a salary 2,000 pesos a week plus bonuses, enough to move my mother out of the slum, enough to buy quiet. I told myself I was doing this for her, for the life they stole from us, for the father they burned alive. But that was a lie, I did it because it felt good to be powerful, because for the first time in my life, someone listened when I spoke, because I was no longer invisible, and because deep down I knew no one survives in a world like this by staying clean. They say weddings are about love. Mine was about power. I was 17 when Miguel proposed. He did it in front of 50 armed men at a ranch just outside Salamanca, right after a successful fuel shipment cleared the border. He got down on one knee beside a pile of stolen cash and whispered, "You're the only one I trust." I said yes, not because I was in love, but because I understood what the ring really meant: protection. Marriage would elevate me in the eyes of the cartel. I would no longer be Miguel's girl. I would be his partner. And that made me untouchable. The wedding lasted 3 days. 500 guests, politicians, police commanders, local celebrities, drunk mariachis and armored trucks parked side by side. The Aguirre brothers paid for everything. It was their way of showing the world that they weren't just criminals, they were kings. They gifted us gold, a house, and enough weapons to outfit a militia. It was also the first time I saw El Marro in person. He wasn't the monster I expected. No rage, no shouting, just stillness like a snake watching from the shade. He didn't say much, but when he looked at you, it felt like being measured for a coffin. 2 weeks later, Miguel told me El Marro had offered us something bigger. A new cartel, unified, disciplined, ruthless. The Santa Rosa de Lima cartel wasn't just about stealing fuel anymore. It was about domination, taking over supply routes, buying officials, building an army. El Marro's plan was to industrialize crime. No more scattered gangs, no more chaos, just a single machine. And he wanted me in it, not as someone's wife, as his weapon. He had heard about me, the gas station, the threats, the psychological tactics. He wanted proof that I could be more than a manipulator. He gave me a name, Ramirez, a mid-level Pemex engineer who'd been leaking information to the federales. My orders were simple: get close, seduce him, kill him. It took me 2 weeks to build the lie. I became Daniela, an engineering student from Leon. I got fake university documents, read just enough about oil distribution to sound convincing. I met Ramirez in a hotel bar in Salamanca. He was exactly what I'd been promised: married, lonely, drunk, and craving admiration. By the 3rd night, he was in love with me. By the 5th, he invited me to a motel outside town. He thought we were going to sleep together. I told him to close his eyes, that I had a surprise. I shot him in the base of the skull. Clean, silent. His body collapsed onto the bed, champagne still bubbling on the table. I threw up in the bathroom until bile burned my throat. But what shocked me most wasn't the nausea. It was how fast it vanished. By morning, his face had already faded from my memory. Just another task. Just another target. The video I recorded of the kill went straight to El Marro. He called it elegant. And just like that, I was no longer Miguel's girl. I was El Marro's assassin. After Ramirez, I stopped flinching. The first time is always the hardest, they say. But once you cross that line, once you hold a man's life in your hand and squeeze, you stop feeling like you've crossed anything at all. The world just changes its shape around you. I became a ghost in plain sight. My missions weren't like the others. I didn't storm buildings with rifles or spray bullets from car windows. I didn't wear balaclavas or tactical vests. I wore heels, lipstick, a clipboard. I became whoever I needed to be. A student, a secretary, a nurse, a lover. The trick was always the same: get close, learn the patterns, identify the weak spot, then deliver the blow without warning or remorse. Sometimes it was poison in a coffee cup, sometimes a car crash with cut brake lines, sometimes a pillow pressed to a face in the middle of a rented apartment. By the end of my second year, I had taken down 34 targets: federales, rival lieutenants, disloyal politicians, a journalist in León who got too close to our money trails, a protected witness in Querétaro tracked down to a safe house under a false name. Every mission was silent, surgical, and final. El Marro was pleased. He called me his clean hand, the blade no one saw coming. And in return, he gave me everything: armored cars, cash bonuses, safe houses in 4 states. He never made me wait in line like the other sicarios. When I walked into a meeting, men twice my size went quiet. But the mission that defined me came in 2017 in the heart of Michoacán. A splinter cell of CJNG was sabotaging our fuel routes. El Marro wanted them neutralized quietly. He didn't want war, he wanted silence. I posed as an accountant for a fake construction firm, attended parties, shook hands with murderers, sipped mezcal with men who had slit throats hours earlier. I danced with them, laughed at their jokes, memorized their schedules. Then, during a business dinner, I laced 3 wine glasses with a neurotoxin that mimicked food poisoning. Within 36 hours, all 3 CJNG leaders were dead. No bullets, no witnesses, no autopsies, just accidents. It was beautiful, efficient, devastating. When I returned to Guanajuato, they threw me a private party. Champagne, applause. Even El Marro raised a toast. To the girl with the smile that kills, he said. That's when the name stuck, La Flaca Bonita. A contradiction in words, just like me. Thin, pretty, deadly. I wasn't proud, but I was respected. And in a world like ours, respect is safer than love. Sometimes after a mission, I'd stare at myself in the mirror and try to find the girl who once cried over her father's charred body. She wasn't there anymore. She'd been replaced by a woman who could kill with grace and smile while doing it. By the time I turned 22, I wasn't just an assassin. I was a strategist, a ghost with a war map. El Marro brought me into his inner circle, not as a soldier, not as a mistress, but as an operative. Someone who could think, adapt, manipulate. He once told me, "Guns are loud. You're surgical." And he was right. I didn't just eliminate targets, I dismantled systems. The first time he summoned me to the main compound outside Santa Rosa de Lima, I thought it was a test. The place looked like a military fortress. Barbed wire, watchtowers with snipers, drones circling overhead. Inside, it was a command center, maps of Pemex pipelines on the walls, stacks of cash counted by machines, photos of enemies marked with red X's. It was the beating heart of a criminal empire pulsing with greed and paranoia. El Marro sat in a leather chair flanked by men twice his size, but no one spoke unless he allowed it. He looked at me like he was reading a blueprint. "You've done things I didn't think women could do," he said. I didn't flinch. "You've done things I didn't think anyone could do." He offered me something no one else had: authority, a command post. He wanted me to lead a new division, infiltration and target elimination. My unit would operate outside the standard hierarchy. No uniforms, no protocols, only results. We'd go after high-value targets: moles, informants, government collaborators, anyone too dangerous to let live. He gave me full discretion, unlimited budget, vehicles, safe houses, my own team of specialists hand-picked from across the cartel, and the salary 25,000 pesos a week plus operational bonuses. I didn't even blink before saying yes, because I knew the truth. In the cartel, power was the only protection that mattered. While other sicarios were dying in street battles, I was orchestrating plays that reshaped territories. I'd use fake IDs to infiltrate law offices, banks, even hospitals. We'd intercept supply chains, reroute money laundering routes, and silence threats before they even realized we were watching. I taught my team to think like ghosts, to leave nothing behind but doubt. At night, El Marro would call me for briefings. He'd pour 2 glasses of tequila, hand me one, and lean back while I walked him through our progress. It was never flirtation. It was respect. I was his blade in the dark, and I never missed. But power has its price. The more people I killed, the more my name echoed in whispers. La Flaca Bonita was no longer just a nickname. It was a warning. Some feared me, some hated me, and a few started watching too closely. But at the time, I didn't care. I had risen higher than any woman in the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel, and I thought I could stay on top without ever looking down. I became a mother in the middle of a war. Sebastian was born on August 15, 2015, a small wrinkled miracle wrapped in hospital linen, his cries louder than any gunfire I'd ever heard. I remember holding him in that fluorescent-lit room, his fingers gripping my thumb like he already knew the world was dangerous. I had taken lives, but now I had created one. And suddenly, I was terrified not of dying, but of leaving him alone. Everything changed. The silencers, the poisons, the cover identities, all of it felt heavier. Each time I left on a mission, I'd kiss Sebastian's forehead like it might be the last time. I began refusing longer assignments. I wanted to be there for his first words, his first steps. I wanted mornings with cartoons, not classified intel briefings. But El Marro had no room for sentiment. 2 months after Sebastian was born, he assigned me a critical operation, infiltrate, a CJNG cell, sabotaging our fuel lines in Michoacan. 6 weeks undercover, high risk, zero margin for error. I begged for time. I said my son was sick, that I wasn't ready. El Marro looked at me and said, "Cartel first, family later." He wasn't threatening me. Not yet. He didn't need to. His silence was enough. So I left. I kissed Sebastian goodbye and disappeared into another false life. Accountant, construction firm, friendly smile, deadly hands. The mission was a success. 3 targets dead, no suspicion. But when I returned home, everything was different. Sebastian wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep. He screamed at night like something had crawled into his dreams and stayed there. Doctors said it was anxiety. I knew it was absence. I held him in my arms and realized my silence was teaching him how to live in fear. Miguel noticed the change in me. "You're slipping," he said one night. "You used to be steel. Now you're glass." We fought more. He wanted more children, a new house, a normal life. But I knew the deeper we invested in family, the harder it would be to leave when the time came. Meanwhile, El Marro's appetite grew darker. He was expanding into narcotics, partnering with Colombians, Venezuelans. The violence escalated. So did the missions. One night he ordered me to kidnap the family of a police commander, a man suspected of coordinating raids on our labs. El Marro wanted them tortured, wanted to send videos, wanted to break the man's mind before his body. I refused. I said it was too risky, that the heat would be unbearable, that we'd lose control. He stared at me in silence, then said, "You're forgetting who gave you everything." And then, more quietly, "If you're not loyal, you're dangerous." That was the first time I felt it. He was watching me, studying me, weighing me. I left the compound that night with my stomach in knots. Back home, Sebastian was asleep, curled up with a toy soldier I'd given him. Miguel was in the kitchen, drinking in silence. I stood in the doorway looking at them and thought, how many more missions before they become targets too? I had lived among ghosts for so long. I didn't know how to be human anymore. Paranoia is the final stage of power, and El Marro was drowning in it. He no longer trusted his lieutenants. He no longer smiled. He no longer slept. Rumors spread like wildfire he was using his own product mixing coke and pills, spiraling into the same madness he once despised in his rivals. He began executing men for arriving late to meetings, for speaking out of turn, for glancing too long at maps that weren't theirs to read. Loyalty tests became routine. One Sicario was ordered to shoot his cousin to prove devotion. Another was forced to carve information into the skin of a captured rival before he was allowed to eat again. No one said no, because saying no meant disappearing. Then I found the file. It was late. I had stayed behind at one of our safe houses to review intel. A courier dropped off a locked case, one of the weekly updates Marro demanded. I opened it, sorting through reports, arrests, payments, bribes. And then I saw it, a dossier marked with my name. It was thick. Inside were photos of Sebastian at school, Miguel buying groceries, my mother at the pharmacy. There were notes, addresses, routines, vulnerabilities. He was building insurance, in case I ever stopped obeying. I closed the folder with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. I had served this man, killed for him, lied for him, bled for him, and still he saw me as disposable. I went home that night and stood over Sebastian's crib for an hour watching him sleep. Then I walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and looked in the mirror. I didn't see a mother. I saw a weapon he would soon turn against the people I loved. The decision didn't come in a flash. It came slowly, like rot. Over weeks, I watched El Marro unravel further. He began vetting even his most trusted captains, asking questions he already knew the answers to, planting fake intel to see who repeated it. His empire, once cold and efficient, was now bloated and erratic. One night, I watched him execute a driver for bringing him the wrong brand of cigarettes. He didn't blink, didn't even raise his voice, just raised the gun and pulled the trigger. That was the moment I knew if I didn't act, Sebastian would grow up fatherless. Or worse, he'd grow up just like me. I began to plan. I used burner phones, left no trace, built a firewall of intermediaries, reached out to contacts in federal intelligence, carefully, quietly, never twice from the same place. At first, they didn't believe me. A high-level operative offering the entire structure of the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel, too good to be true. So I gave them proof maps, schedules, passwords, drop locations, names of officials on payroll, accounts used to launder money, coordinates of fuel labs and weapons caches. Each file I passed made the noose tighter around Marro's neck, but it also put the blade closer to my own. If I slipped even once, he would know, and he would turn the only thing I had ever built, the only life I'd ever known, into a coffin. On August 2nd, 2019, at exactly 3:00 a.m., the sky over Guanajuato lit up with gunfire. Federal forces struck 17 cartel locations at once: labs, safe houses, fuel bunkers, and stash points. It was a military-grade operation, precise down to the minute. I had helped coordinate every detail from the guard rotations to the emergency escape routes, and most importantly, I had given them El Marro's exact location. He was captured trying to board a helicopter from a hidden airstrip behind his compound. The same escape route I had once memorized in case I ever had to extract him myself. That night, instead of pulling him out, I handed him in. Watching the footage of his arrest was the most bittersweet moment of my life. I had finally caged the monster, but the nightmare was far from over. Within hours, word spread through the surviving remnants of the cartel there was a traitor. And it didn't take long before the whispers turned into names. My name. The government gave me new papers, a new identity, a small house near the U.S. border. They called it protection, but I knew better. I had lived in the shadows too long to think walls and documents could stop what was coming. There were still men out there, 11 to be exact, who had worked beside me, who had seen my face, heard my voice, and now wanted my blood. I didn't wait for them to come. I went after them first. One by one, I hunted them. El Guicho, the twins from Irapuato, the accountant who laundered cash through fake gas stations, the woman who once helped me fake a nurse's identity and now posted cryptic threats on narco blogs. I knew their routines, their hiding spots, their families. I killed 11 in total, some with a gun, some with poison, one with a kitchen knife. The last was El Güero El Marro's personal bodyguard and the only one who knew about Sebastian. I found him in Veracruz, hiding behind layers of security, but he still used the same brand of cigarettes, still took the same route home from the gym. I slit his throat behind a seafood restaurant during a thunderstorm. It was clean, quick, and it ended everything. When his body hit the ground, I felt it, I was free. But freedom is a strange word when you've built your life on blood. Miguel died during the raids. He didn't run. He fought. I never got to say goodbye. Never got to explain that the betrayal wasn't against him, it was to protect the son we created. Sometimes I wonder if he would have understood. Sometimes I wonder if I even care. I look at Sebastian now asleep in his bed, dreaming of a world he'll never know I came from. And I wonder how long I can keep lying to him. How long before he asks why his mother wakes up screaming, why she checks the locks 3 times, why she flinches at the sound of sirens. I erased the cartel, but I couldn't erase myself. I live now in a town so small it doesn't appear on most maps. I go by a different name. I wear glasses I don't need. I tie my hair differently, walk differently, with a slight northern accent I practiced for months. I volunteer at the local clinic, hand out vitamins to pregnant mothers, run paperwork for the doctor who doesn't ask questions. Everyone here thinks I'm a woman who escaped an abusive marriage. And in a way, I did. They see kindness in my eyes. They don't see the 45 names engraved on the inside of my skull. Sebastian is 8 now. He believes his mother is a survivor. He hugs me without fear. He draws pictures of us holding hands in the sun. Sometimes I look at those drawings and feel a pang of guilt so sharp it could slit my own throat. Because he doesn't know who I was, what I did, what I destroyed to keep him alive. And I won't tell him, because the truth is not a gift, it's a curse. I still dream of them, the ones I killed. The Pemex engineer with the champagne, the CJNG men choking on poisoned wine, Don Fernando, the gas station owner whose tears stained the contract I forced him to sign. Sometimes I hear their voices in the night, but I don't answer anymore. I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't believe I deserve it. But if you're listening, if you're someone young, hungry, broken, staring down the barrel of a choice like I once did, let me tell you something no one ever told me. The cartel doesn't save you. It devours you. It promises money, power, respect. But what it gives you is silence, blood, and fear that never leaves your bones. It turns you into a weapon, and then throws you away when your edges dull. I was never a queen. I was never free. I was just another ghost behind a pretty smile. People ask how I survived. They say I'm lucky, that I'm smart, that I'm ruthless. But the truth, I had something no one else had. I had a son. And I was willing to burn the entire world to keep him breathing. If this is my final confession, let it be this. El Marro wasn't the monster. I was, because I made him, because I served him, because I became exactly what I swore I'd destroy. And now I carry that truth in silence, every day, every breath, until the day my past finds me again, or the day Sebastian learns who I really was, whichever comes first.